If you drafted these players, let me try to help you come up with some trades so you can hopefully upgrade your roster. Tyreek Hill, I understand a lot of people are excited about a bounce back, and I get where you're coming from. Because if we look at the games that Tyreek Hill has played over the past 3 years with Tua versus without Tua, he's averaged 20.6 points per game with Tua and 11.7 points per game with Tua. That's good for the wide receiver 2 finish versus the wide receiver 33 finish, according to flogfantasy.com. We go ahead and we look at him jumping from 7 targets a game to 9.85, a 23% team target share up to over 30%. He jumps from 56 receiving yards per game up to 97. He's had zero receiving touchdowns in games with no Tua. So it's an absolute brutal run out last year where Tyreek Hill had no Tua for a decent stretch of the season, and you had the wrist injury as well. Now, once Tua came back in, I consistently turned on this camera, talked to you, and ranked Tyreek Hill in my top 10 wide receivers that week, and he consistently let us down. And I am honestly maybe just done with it. Because the thing with Tyreek Hill is this is a receiver that's built his game off athleticism that hit the age 30 mark last year. And we know that wide receivers, once they push into their 30s, once you see that dramatic fall off, very rarely are you actually getting the bounce back. And I was willing to maybe talk myself into buying Tyreek Hill at a wide receiver 2 price tag in underdog drafts early in the offseason with the thought process, Tua's fully healthy, Tyreek's now fully healthy. He had to deal with the wrist injury last year until training camp happened. Because now what has played out? Tyreek Hill came out and he's just kind of made a mess of things. Seems like his relationship and Tua's, it's fallen off to the point where the vibes are really bad in Miami. And at the same time, Tyreek Hill is now dealing with an oblique injury at 31 years old, coming off the worst season of his NFL career since 2016. So I'm very rarely going to be trying to buy the bounce back with an age 31 season. If we go over to flogfantasy.com's trade finder, we can see that recent deals that involve Tyreek Hill, somebody was able to package together Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Warren for Cedric Tillman. And they also got Josh Jacobs at the same time. Somebody also was able to just make a 3-for-3 swap where they went from Tyreek, Mahomes, and Breece Hall to Trevion, Burrow, and JSN. And I view this going, I'd rather have Trevion over Breece. I'd rather have Burrow over Mahomes. And I'd rather have JSN over Tyreek at this point. So I'd be just trying to kind of swap to a wide receiver like Jackson Smith and Jigba that does have that upwards trajectory. Or if you're playing in a 2 wide receiver single flex format, if you could take like a low end tight end 1 like Tucker Kraft and Tyreek Hill and get to an elite tight end such as Trey McBride or George Kittle, I'd be very happy with any of those deals. If we're looking at his week 1 projections on Underdog Fantasy, they have his higher lower at 71.5 receiving yards, which is marking him as that high-end wide receiver too. Now, let's go over to Garrett Wilson, who is a 24-year-old wide receiver coming off the best year of his NFL career going into his age 25 season. And typically, if we use the range of outcomes tool on flogfantasy.com, you'll see those are the guys that you want to be drafting. Because we saw Mike Evans with a very similar age 24 season, and the following year, he averaged 18 points per game. We saw A.J. Brown with a very similar age 24 season, the following year, 17.5 points. T.Y. Hilton jumped to 17 points. Deontay Johnson jumped to 17 points. So history tells us that drafting these mid-wide receiver 2s when they were 24, in their age 25 season, they can turn into wide receiver 1s. Now, the reason why I am not optimistic for this happening with Garrett Wilson whatsoever is the offensive environment. While I understand that every single person and their mom is going to come out here and they're going to remind you that Justin Fields had one season where he elevated DJ Moore to be a viable fantasy play, frankly, off of just one big Thursday night game, they are going to overlook the fact that the Jets were above average in terms of their passing volume last year. While, of course, Aaron Rodgers was not good for real life standards. I'm not going to tell you that the Jets offense was great. I'm not going to tell you that the Jets were a good football team. They weren't then and they aren't now. But I don't care about real life. I don't care about efficiency. The only thing that I care about is volume, because that's what we score points with in fantasy. And the Jets last season were 6th in the NFL in passing touchdowns. The Jets last season were 14th in the NFL in passing yards. So if we're just looking at total points from the quarterback position, they were about a top 10 passing offense. Now, should that be the expectation for Justin Fields this year? Hell to the no. We go back and we look at Justin Fields through his entire NFL career. His best season ever, he had 17 passing touchdowns in comparison to what the Jets had with 31 last year. Justin Fields' best season ever, he had 2,500 passing yards. The Chicago Bears gave up on him. The Pittsburgh Steelers gave up on him. And now he's on his last legs in New York. I think that Fields himself can be a decent real-life quarterback. Hell, maybe he's better than Rodgers. I don't know. But what I do know is the passing volume is going to be dramatically lowered. We can even see this with the season-long pick-em projections that are posted on Underdog right now, where Underdog is Justin Fields for the season at higher-lower 14.5 passing touchdowns and higher-lower 2,600 passing yards. And people may say, oh my gosh, this is way too low. I'm going to go take the higher. I would warn you not to do it because he's literally never hit 2,600 passing yards in his career. And so that's just not going to be enough volume in this offense for Garrett Wilson. Like, even if we go forward and look at what the projections are week one, Justin Fields is higher lower 170 passing yards week one. We go and look at Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's higher lower 54.5 receiving yards. So when you see my week one rankings, don't be surprised when Garrett Wilson's a low-end wide receiver 2, not a low-end wide receiver 1. We can go over to the trade finder, and a perfect example of a deal that if you have too many depth wide receivers and you have like 3 startable players on your bench to make a 2-for-1 tier up, we see someone trade Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith-Njigba for Nico Collins. I love it. We see somebody trade Garrett Wilson and Chase Brown for Calvin Ridley and CeeDee Lamb. And I understand maybe Garrett Wilson went in the 3rd round of your draft. Calvin Ridley went in the 7th round. Chase Brown went in the 2nd round. CeeDee Lamb went in the 1st. It doesn't really matter the round difference between the players because there is a much larger gap between CeeDee Lamb and Chase Brown than there is between Garrett Wilson and Calvin Ridley. And then somebody also used Garrett Wilson to upgrade from Chuba Hubbard to Devon Achane. I would love any of those moves. And if you are interested in, for whatever reason, taking the Justin Fields higher than 2,600 passing yards or Justin Fields to have 15 plus passing touchdowns this season, I would warn against it. But if you are, it's on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog for week one is having the biggest week of promos that they've ever put out. Where on Thursday night, they're giving you a free Saquon Barkley gimme pick of higher, lower, half a total yard. Thursday night, you are getting also a 50% profit boost token. Friday night, another 50% profit boost token. For the Sunday slate, you're getting a 100% profit boost token. And on top of that, Underdog is actually allowing us to create our own flock and pick and pack for that Thursday night game. And they're going to let us do it for the Friday night and Sunday night games as well. I would love for you to tail us with that. And if you're not already on Underdog, there's a link in the description. The link in the comment section will get you an additional $50 added into your account when you just play your first 5 with promo code FLOCK. And you're also going to get our updated 2025 fantasy football rankings tailored to your exact format. It's not all. If you are a member of flockfantasy.com, either you got the season pass or you're an annual mother flocker, go to the post page and fill out the Google form. Just put in your Underdog username and your flockfantasy.com email address, and you'll get an additional $10 Underdog credit added into your account. I'm going to annoy the hell out of you with Underdog promos this week because Underdog is putting out some crazy offers right now y'all have to take advantage of. Now, going over to our next guy with Jayden Reed. We've been selling Jayden Reed all offseason. Like, I am very fortunate that I did not draft this guy in the Flock League and very fortunate that I did not take him in really any Underdog drafts. Big reason being Jayden Reed somehow managed to get worse from year 1 to year 2. Jayden Reed fell from wide receiver 24 as a rookie down to wide receiver 41. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, this is because the Packers threw the ball less. Jordan Love was injured. No. Because you actually had Jayden Reed falling from 17.5% of the Green Bay Packers targets to 16.2%. So his target share fell from year 1 to year 2. And if y'all remember every sell high video that I made during the season last year, anytime Jayden Reed had a big play, anytime he had a big game, we immediately went, the dude had one game with more than 6 targets, sell. Then you see what happens with this team in the offseason, where they go out there, they take Matthew Golden with their first round pick, and they don't even stop there. They take a second wide receiver in the NFL draft. Now they go out of their way and they trade for Micah Parsons, which that tells me that more likely than not, this team's going to try to run the ball like last season. And Jayden Reed still cannot run routes pain-free, even though he has the boot off. So we don't know if he's going to be available week 1. So I look at all this. I think it's a clear sell. I can go over to the trade finder. I see people flipping Jayden Reed straight up for Ricky Pearsall. I see people flipping him straight up for Stephon Diggs. Be an absolute no-brainer to get either one of those receivers. Or honestly, I know that you can't do this in every league. I know you can't do this in most leagues. But if you're playing with some people that don't really know what they're doing, selling 4 quarters for $1 always makes sense. Like going through and looking at a team that saw Jayden Reed, Mixon, Chubb, Jerry Jeudy in a package, and they were willing to trade T. Higgins for it. Coming from somebody who has both Nick Chubb and Jerry Jeudy in the flock league, you definitely want the T. Higgins side of that, and you just go ahead and get the best player. Now, our next wide receiver, we've been talking down on pretty much all offseason. We got Deebo Samuel. With Deebo, very similar to what we had with Tyreek, when you see the fall off from the older wide receiver, from 16.25 points per game to 10.24, this is not an opportunity to buy low. The opportunity to buy low maybe would be with a younger wide receiver like Michael Pittman Jr., but when these guys go on the other side of the age cliff, I begin to get concerned. Like if we just look at the range of outcomes for Deebo Samuel, his age 28 season actually comped to other age 28-year-old years like Odell Beckham Jr. in 2020. And out of his 9 closest comps, do you know how many of them average more than 10 points per game at 29? 2. We go ahead and we look at Terry McLaurin signing his extension. Terry's going to be the alpha in Washington. There's possibly more rushing touchdowns for Jayden Daniels this year, assuming that we don't even have a sophomore slump. And we combine this all with the fact that it's not even like Washington had a compelling wide receiver 2 in fantasy last season. So I'm off of Deebo. I just frankly don't see how you get to a path of top 15 production in points per game this year. Again, similar to what we saw with a previous trade, if you have a bunch of like starting players on your bench, like if you're sitting on your bench and you have Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman, Ricky Pearsall, and then maybe even somebody like Josh Downs, I love those 2-for-1 upgrades at the same position. Like this person trades Deebo and Michael Pittman Jr. for Devonta Smith, and in a 10-team league, you can go to the waiver wire and get somebody interesting. And Deebo Samuel, his week 1 projection on Underdog is higher, lower 45.5 receiving yards. Now let's move over to Chris Olave. So we made the video series early in the offseason just outlining how bad NFL offenses severely cap wide receiver ceilings. And what do you have currently for the projected points with the Vegas implied team totals from the New Orleans Saints weeks 1 through 14? They currently project to be the worst offense in the NFL. They actually have fallen behind the Cleveland Browns since the Cleveland Browns went out there and announced Joe Flacco as their starter, and vice versa. You had the New Orleans Saints going out there and telling us that they're going to be starting a quarterback that maybe shouldn't even play in the CFL. Like right now, the implied team totals weeks 1 through 14, you have the Saints at 209 points, the Browns at 211, the Giants at 219, the Jets at 230, the Titans at 248, and then you have kind of a larger step up to the Raiders, the Falcons, and the Panthers. But if I'm looking at Chris Olave, similar to what we saw with some of these other receivers, you had the significant drop-off from 2023 to 2024, falling from 14.5 points per game down to 9.6. Now, full transparency, I don't think Olave got worse as a talent. I think Olave is still a very capable wide receiver. I think he's still a very good one. Like we go ahead and we look at his yards per route run through the first 3 years of his NFL career. He's been at 2.56, 2.08, 2.33. He actually had a career high with his yards per target at 9.1 this past season. The issue is just the overall regression that we're going to have from the offense. And if Chris Olave was the wide receiver 54 last year, if we pull this up, you actually had the New Orleans Saints giving you 338 points for, which of course isn't going to be the best, but that was at least ahead of the Bears. That was ahead of the Giants. If we go ahead and look at the AFC, that was ahead of the Browns. That was ahead of the Patriots. That was ahead of the Raiders. That was ahead of the Titans. That was ahead of the Jags. It was right tied with the Jets. So, I mean, in reality, the Saints were a bad offense last year, but they weren't horrendous. We go back to 2023, where the Saints were actually a little bit closer to being an average offense. They scored 402 points, which actually put them in the upper half of the NFC. So Olave, if the offense was good, he can go back to where he was as a mid-wide receiver 2 in fantasy. But obviously, you had him falling off a cliff last season, and it looks like that fall's only going to worsen. Now, going over and looking at Zay Flowers, I don't necessarily want to say you have to sell him. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say that you probably need to start on week 1. I think he's probably going to have a really exciting performance against the Buffalo Bills in a game where everybody is going to be watching because, frankly, this should be one of the highest scoring games of the entire season. But beyond that, you're looking at a wide receiver that fell from being the wide receiver 31 in points per game as a rookie with 12.9 down to 12.3 points per game as the wide receiver 35 as a second-year player. This is in a season in which Mark Andrews does almost nothing, given the fact that Andrews was injured at the beginning of the year. And we go ahead and we look at what Lamar Jackson did. Oh, Lamar Jackson had 41 passing touchdowns, a career high. It's the only season Lamar had ever had 40 passing touchdowns. So I'm looking at this going, well, there's no way that Lamar Jackson has the same season that he did last year, this season. Overall, the passing volume's probably going to regress. And Zay Flowers last year with the best run out possible for Lamar was the wide receiver 35. So, again, another guy that if you can make a 2-for-1 deal where we can somehow use his name and get to a wide receiver 1, let's run it. And then our last wide receiver I'm going to bring up, y'all know we really were heavy and on fading him early in the offseason, was Juwan Jennings. I'm going to stand by this fade, especially now that he's missed effectively all of training camp with the calf injury. Still doesn't seem like he's on good terms with this team. And here are some fun stats for you. These are all pulled from flockfantasy.com. He's a 27-year-old wide receiver. He has played 60 games in his NFL career. He has had 4 games with 20 or more fantasy points, and he has had 1 game with more than 10 targets. All regular season games, maybe at a good playoff game. But for him to play 60 regular season games and to have 1 game with more than 10 targets, where last year you had no Ayuk, last year you had Deebo Samuel fall off a cliff, you had no Ricky Pearsall effectively. I don't see how you can get excited about this profile. But I think that's all I got for you. I really hope that I was able to help you out. Again, I'm going to annoy the hell out of you this week because it is the biggest week of the entire season for Underdog promos. If you're not already taking advantage of them, you absolutely have to. They have the free Saquon Barkley gimme pick on Thursday night, more than less than half a total yard, a 50% profit boost token that same night, a 50% profit boost token on Friday, a 100% profit boost token on Saturday. They're allowing us to create our own Flock'em Pick'em packs. That way we can ride them together on the live streams. And on top of that, we actually have that new Underdog promo they're running where if you use code FLOCK, after you play your first $5, you're going to get $50 added into your account. You're going to get our 2025 fantasy football draft sheets. And if you are a paid member of flockfantasy.com, go fill out that Google form. Even if you've been on Underdog for years, or if you sign up today, it doesn't matter. You're going to get an additional free $10 added into your Underdog account. But I think that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you. I'm going to leave that link in the description, comment section, and I'll see you in the live stream tonight.